Всім доброго ранку. Вітаю учасників нашого заходу
So
сьогодні.
good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to welcome all of the participants of our today's event. We're about to start. There's going to be a couple of technical moments while we're still waiting for some of the participants joining us. We're going to help them enter this room and to set out all of the technical moments. And I would like to pass the floor to our partners today, our partners in interpretation today. They're going to tell us how it's going to be working today. We have the interpretation available for all of our English-speaking speakers today. So we would like to tell you about some of the technical details so it will be comfortable for you to use Zoom and to follow the event. So a couple of words on technical interpretation. Yes, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Dear participants, would like to remind you on the simultaneous interpretation function. So please take a look at the bottom panel of your controls. There is the interpretation button. Please choose the Ukrainian channel if you're going to be speaking or would like to listen to the Ukrainian broadcast. That is very important. Otherwise, our foreign and international colleagues will not be able to hear properly the English interpretation. So please do not ignore that and do that before the event starts.
Please choose the icon of globe interpretation English at the bottom panel. Thank you for your attention. Дякую за увагу. Можете починати, пані Олю.
Дякую, колеги.
Thank you, dear colleagues. So we're going to start our today's broadcast. And first of all, I would like to pass the floor for the introductory speech. And we do hope that we're going to have some of the participants joining us in no time, and the speakers are going to be joining us quite soon. And I would like to pass the floor to Yulia Hrechka, who is the head of the board of the anti-corruption headquarters. So please, Yulia, the floor is yours, and I do believe that Yulia is going to do a brief introduction for all of us. Good morning, dear participants. Good morning, dear participants of our today's event. And today we're about to be discussing the issues of the anti-corruption in the regions. We're going to be speaking about the results of our work in this direction for the recent 6 months. I would like to remind you that in July last year, we have already got together for a panel discussion about the anti-corruption agenda before the local elections took place. And we have discussed what were the main two conclusions that we have drawn. We have understood that the anti-corruption movement in the region has a quite different character. It is different from those problems that we are discussing on the central levels. And we have to understand that and we have to consider that. And especially in the work of the kind of the NGOs as we are and as our partners in the Assembly Together Against the Corruption. So we do not pay the needed attention for working in the regions, and we have to keep on working more. And today we're going to be discussing what has happened in this time in the framework of our project and what we have done, and what has happened in the framework of the activities of the local self-governments, because we have analyzed their work before the elections and after the elections up till now. So that is why we really wanted to share a couple of moments with you today. We're going to be covering the topics of our work in the recent 6 months. And throughout this time, we have managed to empower and improve our work in the regions with the civil activists, with the NGOs. We have created the coalition of the NGOs, and I'm not going to be spoiling what is going to be said by my colleagues today further on, but we have improved our activity, we have broadened our network, we have empowered our collaboration further on. The other hand that we're going to be discussing today is the consequences and the conclusions that we have drawn from our previous work. So what kind of narrow narrow bottlenecks we have seen. We have once again learned that the civil activists and the anti-corruptionists in the region, they're mostly the same people. So there is a quite limited range of people working in the regions on these topics. And we have to say that the overall civil society, the all national civil society organizations, they should have worked on making the numbers more. So engaging young, active people for the anti-corruptional activities in the regions, first of all. Throughout this period, we have improved our work with the National Agency on Corruption Prevention in working, for example, with the Ombudsman on preventing corruptions. And we have understood that those people are, on one hand, in the need of knowledge, in the need of the development of the new competences when they work in the regions. There is certain lack of knowledge on one hand. On the other hand, we have clearly seen that there is a big demand, a big call out from these people for their further own development and for additional knowledge to be attributed. And this is a very important note for us as a civil experts to be working with the people working in the anti-corruptional field in the regions. We're going to be telling you about the toolkit that we have developed on the 100 of corruption schemes that we have developed together with our colleagues. You know, there are 100 of those schemes that we have identified, but that's not all of the schemes possible right now. And we have managed the schemes that are, once again, common for all of the regions, but there are some schemes that are as well unique for some certain regions, and how to work with those, how to deal with those, how to prevent those from happening. We're going to be speaking of how we have analyzed the anti-corruptional programs of the local councils and what we have seen in the framework of this analysis. But the most important things, I would like to address all of our today's participants, all of our today's speakers, with trying to speak not only about the recent past, not only about the latest 6 months, but not only about the current situation, like we have what we have. This is what the Ukrainian sayings usually said. But I also would like to ask you to speak about the future, of what has to be done next, what we should emphasize next, and how we should improve ourselves, how we should broaden our activities into the regions when we speak about the fighting corruption on the regional level. Because I believe that we should not only work in changing the corruptional culture in the regions, we should not only work in analyzing of what is going on and what has been done to drawing conclusions when these issues are being worked in the best way or in the worst, but not only improving the situation, but building some very specific decisions on fighting the corruptional schemes together with the local self-governance, together with amalgamated community, together with the cities, and keep on advocating those decisions, keep on advocating through all of the local available bodies and institutions. So I'd like to wish you the good and productive discussion. We know that this discussion couldn't have been held without all of your participation. It's very good that we have those partners as UNDP, as um, they have one of their priorities of working with the regions, and their priority corresponds to our priorities as well. So I would like to wish all of us to have a very good discussion today, a very good communication according to the schedule, and the communication that will definitely end up with offers and specific plans that we are going to be implementing together. Thank you. Thank you very much, Julia. Now our event is going to be moderated by two of our colleagues, by Serhiy Matkalik from the Anti-Corruptional Headquarters, the newly elected Executive Director. And the second panel will be moderated by Olesa Tkachuk, the Project Manager of the CSO Together Against Corruption. So we're starting the first panel now. Serhiy, the floor is yours, please. Yes, hello, dear colleagues. I'm pleased to welcome all of you. It's a pleasure to see all of you here. Thank you very much for joining us here today. Thank you for finding the time. We really want to make this discussion today the most relevant for all of you. We would like you to be very active, and I do believe that when you have joined this discussion, you've had some certain questions that you would like to pose. Please do not be scared or do not be ashamed to ask those questions in the chat box. We're going to have the first panel for an hour. We're going to have 4 speakers participating in that. We're going to have Olga Ivanova, who is the head of the project, manager of the project Strengthening Cooperation between Civil Society and Local Governments in the regions to prevent and combat corruption. Well, basically, this is the main project that we have been providing the capacity buildings projects, and I think that Olga is going to tell you more about that. We also have another representative of the civil society. We will have Oksana Velichko, the head of the CSO Together Against Corruption. We will going to have the representatives of the donor organization. We will have Nazar Grom, the manager of the project of crisis coordination and management in Ukraine from UNDP Ukraine. And we're going to have the head of the NICP Department for Prevention and Detection of Corruption, Serhiy Derkach. So we're going to have the representative of the authorities as well. So this is the first panel that we're going to have, and the discussion that we're going to have. We're going to have the representatives of the civil society, the representatives of the donors organization that are working really effectively in the regions, and we're going to have the representatives of the authorities. Each of the speakers will have 15 minutes of time. So if we will be in time, and if all of the speakers by that moment up till 11:10 we're going to wrap up with their presentations, we'll be able to ask the questions that you will post up in the chat box. So please do post the questions. If we will not be able to answer those questions in the framework of our discussion, we're going to be answering your questions in the framework of the Q&A session after the second panel, and our speakers will be able to cover those as well. Just very briefly, I have given you the structure of our first panel, and I just want to give a couple of final words. What do we really want to do with that? We really want to concentrate today on the regional level, on the corruption in the level of the local authorities and the local government. I do believe that a lot of people of you there are aware of the corruption, but there have been some kind of really top scandals, like top corruption as Mykitais and Mr. Tatarov and so on and so forth. But we haven't been discussing the regional level, what our actual population is facing. We have understood that the NICP are ready to prevent corruption in regions, but they need a bit of help. And that is why we have decided to organize this kind of a project when we're going to have the representatives of the civil society, the representatives of ANPC and NNCP, and there's a lot of partners on detention and prevention of corruption that we would like to pass our knowledge to. Because when you would have some certain mandate of authority, then you can implement it in the field, in the ground, and we will manage to prevent corruption from appearing together. So I would like to pass the floor to Olga Ivanova first of all. So please, Olga, I give the floor to you, and maybe the question from me as a moderator to you as a speaker. Can you please tell us, in the framework of the project that we have implemented, the project that you have been implementing and leading, what kind of problems and challenges that you have faced in the region while implementing this project? What are the achievements? What are the results in the framework of implementing of this project we've managed to reach? Olga? Yes, thank you, Serhiy. Just to make it much more comfortable to comprehend all of the information, I'm going to show you the presentations with our results with this project. And I do believe that it's going to be very interesting for all of you to know how in 6 months we've managed to improve the collaboration with the civil society and the organizations in the regions and the local councils to work on the fighting the corruption, what has been done in the latest 6 months, and how we have improved the collaboration with our local governments after the local elections that have took place, what our team has done through that. First of all, just to make a very brief intro about our organization of our anti-corruption headquarters, what are we doing, why we started doing that, and how we got to that. So our organization has been established in 2014, and we are creating the innovative tools of preventing corruption. Throughout this digital tools that we have throughout the innovative technologies, we are engaging the civil society to the anti-corruptional movement, because we understand that while we are being based in Kiev, we understand that we are not able to influence all of the corruption all over Ukraine. We have to engage people We have to engage partners from regions, especially because our country is huge, and we have to collaborate all together in order to reach the best of results. So we are engaging our citizens for the anti-corruptional movement so they will be able to make a lot of impact in that as well. For example, our tools, I think that maybe you have heard some of our tools already, for example, the renovation map, the hidden interest, the map of the coronavirus procurement, or the official servant, Taras, this like a helper and assistance for this, for the public servants. And basically, it is important that from all of these projects, like for example, the hidden interests have been relaunched right now. But when we have launched it for the very first time, we have been collaborating with our partners in the regions. We have engaged the coordinators in the cities. The renovation map has already been continuing doing that. We are broadening our collaborations in the regions every time. We are getting from the regional centers to the smaller cities and towns. We're getting deeper in the regions. On the coronavirus procurement map, we have been working in for regions today. And there's public servant Taras, that is an innovative digital solution that helps the public servants all over Ukraine to fill in their declarations. So basically, one of the goals that we have had is to deepen our regional collaboration, with to deepen and enforce in our network of the partners of organizations that we have in our regions, and the one that will help us to fight corruption more effectively on the regional level. So in the framework of this project, this year, well, actually, in 2020, last year already, we have created the coalition of the CSOs that has united 26 CSOs, anti-corruptional CSOs from all over Ukraine. So basically, in every region, we had a very strong partner in the anti-corruptional element. We have an anti-corruptional organization, the widely known organization that works in the certain region, and the organization that really helped us with some specific work in the specific regions. So we have united many anti-corruptional CSOs around one goal, one aim, in order to improve the collaborations in the regions with the local society and the local government. Together with the coalition, we have created the anti-corruptional agenda that Julia has mentioned at the beginning as well. We have provided it for the candidates in the local elections of Ukraine. This agenda has considered 12 different directions, that we have provided the questions for the candidates in the local elections of whether you are ready to reform some certain sphere, whether you are ready to take some certain solutions, to provide and create some, to take some certain steps in order to fight the certain corruptional schemes in certain spheres. This anti-corruptional agenda has been supported by more than 20 organizations from all over Ukraine and all national organizations that have been wide known. This agenda is still working, it is available, and we are still asking all of the local members of the local parliaments, local deputies to be working, to be using it as a main milestone to fighting corruptions in your local authorities. Our partners, Together Against the Corruption, the CSO, we will have Oksana Velichko, who is going to be representing this organization later on. So they have as well created a unique methodology of analyzing the anti-corruptional programs for the local self-governance authorities, for all the regional level and the local level. This methodology has been created from the spot, so that was the first time it has been created. We really wanted to analyze the anti-corruptional programs for the regional councils, but methodology also covers the local councils, the city councils. This gives us the opportunity to broaden it to the highest level of the authorities and give us the opportunity to evaluate, to provide the public evaluation of what has been produced by the local government bodies in fighting corruption and creating the anti-corruption programs. We have provided the trainings for the local police. We have built and empowered the capacities of our partners in the regions. We had some really good feedback from them with that. They said it was very useful for them to learn that and useful methodology. It was very interesting to learn how you can evaluate the anti-corruptional program, to put some certain points, evaluate it in the certain range, and to understand whether it is effective or no. And as a result result of it, for the very first time, our police, our partners in the regions, they have created their evaluations of the anti-corruption programs of the local councils. You can see the results on the screen right now. For example, the highest points for the anti-corruption activities has been provided to the Lviv region. You can see 55, and Dnipro region 37 points. The lowest points were the 13 points, that's Ivano-Frankivsk region, 17 for Ternopil region. So you can see that there is a gap between these evaluations, but you can see there are really quite good results. We have seen that the anti-corruption programs, they are very formal. They are very formal, and we are continuing working in this direction in order to improve them, in order to make the corruption prevention more effective in future. We continue with this project on the research of the 100 corruptional schemes. We are continuing providing the trainings and education for all the people interested in anti-corruption activities, just for them to see the most effective points in the anti-corruption programs in the future. And I would like to pass the floor to my colleague from the anti-corruption headquarters, to Rodion Khomyakov, our analytics, who has been providing the analysis for the anti-corruption programs of the local councils. And quite recently, he has been conducting the analysis of the anti-corruption programs of the National Anti-Corruption Agency. So basically using this methodology to updating it slow sometimes, but this tool gives you the opportunity to evaluate the anti-corruption programs for different authorities as well, and to provide the feedback to the population and to the civil society. So Rodion will tell you what was the results of his research, and I would like to give the couple of minutes from my time to pass the floor to him. Rodion? Yes, thank you, Olga. Yes, right, you are. We have analyzed the anti-corruption programs of the regional councils, and I would like to draw your attention to that, because, you know, this anti-corruption program, that will be a very active instrument in preventing corruptions in the region. But unfortunately, there are some systematic flaws in that. There have been repeated in some of the programs, which means gives us the understanding that we have to improve the level of how these documents are being prepared. What kind of flaws we have understood? First of all, that was not a good determination of what the anti-corruption, what corruptional risks are. There are sometimes that there are some personal cases that have been identified as a corruptional risk, like, for example, lack of integrity. Of course, we understand that the authority can influence procedures, mechanisms, the regulatory basis that has to approve the space of any kind of possible violations. This is the first systematic flow that we have seen overall in the analysis, and the other one connected with the first is as well that when we do not have the risks identified properly, then there are some certain measures that are being very ineffective. For example, how can we fight the lack of integrity for some specific person? Like, of course, we have been offered for some specific trainings, or even more joke-like, they're offering to create a moral or ethical code of the employees of certain institution. Of course, that's not a very effective mechanisms of fighting corruption or improving the level of integrity overall. And the third big systematic flow that has been repeated all the time is that the lack of the clear indicators that will give you the opportunity to control how the program is being implemented. First of all, there's no deadlines. For example, like it says that the measures have to be implemented constantly, but not for a very specific time. Of course, if you say that it's being developed constantly, you cannot track it. You cannot follow the development of events. And of course, it didn't give you the opportunity to follow the progress of certain measures being taken. That's what we have seen in many programs, and this is one of the flaws that have been identified during the creation of these programs and the design. So one another note, it's basically we should consider this program as a more formal, but we should treat them as a real acting tools. What we have faced a fact recently that's once again on the level of the local communities, this thought is not yet that comfortable. How do we know that? So, this is the third month already for the 2021, but 11 regions do not still have the anti-corruption program that has been approved for this year. For 2 months already, there's no anti-corruption strategy for the local authorities. That is unacceptable. And what we believe that for the local development, the authorities that should draw more attention of preparing and implementing the anti-corruption policies in the regions. Thank you very much, Olga. Thank you, Radion. Thank you, Radion. Well, I think that I would like to, I'm already ending up my presentation with that. And I would like to say that basically this project has given us the opportunity to join the efforts of the civil society organizations all over Ukraine. We have engaged many good partners. We're really grateful for the collaborations, for example, for the analysis of the anti-corruption program that has been very interesting. The methodology that we have developed is accessible and it's really good, and we can use it for the years to come to evaluate the anti-corruption programs that the institutions are going to create with some certain frequency. And of course, as one of the results of the project will be covered by Oksana Velichko, and I would like to pass the floor to Serhiy, our moderator. Maybe you would like to have to say. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to moderate and to do my work. Well, yes, basically, yes, we have some questions. There are some questions have been voiced out in the chat, but I would like to say that maybe we will answer those questions in the end if we will have some time in our panel. So I would like to pass the floor to Oksana Velichko, the head of the CSO Together Against Corruption. So have helped us with together to implement this project against corruption. And Oksana is going to tell us about 100 corruptional schemes. That's our research that we have conducted locally. So please, Oksana, the floor is yours. What have we learned and the framework of our research? Yes, thank you, Serhiy. Thank you, Olga. So speaking on our research on these 100 corruptional schemes, first of all, just a couple of words in our organization. This is a coordinational platform to prevent corruption that unites the efforts of the best international experts and the professionals of our government in order to make changes happen. I have just made notes. We have around 1,500 experts that we're collaborating with, and more than 1,000 of professionals from the government that we are addressing to help them identify the corruptional schemes. We have certain lists. We're working on some certain projects on the central level. We're working in the regions, for example, with your great projects that we have implemented together with our partners that has been connected to the corruptions in the regions. So a couple of our project, because basically this is something that we are really like to do. We really like to find and identify the corruptional schemes, to describe them, to understand what are the reasons for that, and to offer some measures of how we can prevent that. We have a book as well. Some people say that, this is a toolkit for the corruptionists or for anti-corruptions. For the anti-corruptionists, for all of us to be aware, for all of us to know what kind of corruptional schemes are there and how we can prevent them from happening. Another book that has been the top 20 corruption schemes locally, that this is basically, we are describing what can be done on the local level, on the central level, in order to prevent the corruptional schemes in action. And our research on 100 corruptional schemes in the regions of Ukraine, the one that we have conducted together with our partners from the coalition of from the anti-corruption headquarters. And I would like to speak today about this book. So how it has about this publication, how it has been structured. This is a publication that is describing 100 corruptional schemes for the 25 sphere of the public relations and the public spheres. There are connected to many different things, but most of the corruptional schemes, the one that we have had been reported with our experts, our partners that we worked, are concerning the construction, the land management. There's a lots of corruptional schemes that have been seen in the utilities, enterprises, and the utility service providers. You can write the whole separate books on that. The property, by the way, the kindergartens and the corruptional scheme that is working in the kindergarten, that has been quite possible, it has been minimized slightly to get to starting the line, the queue for the kindergarten, the EQ, and our colleague Ihor Yefremov has introduced this EQ in the kindergarten in Kiev, and there is less complaints on that. So the corruptional schemes that are there, they can be fought with the help of many different tools available. We are as well describing the corruptional schemes in procurement, parking, advertisement, cultural legacy, transport, metropolitan, the advertisement in the transport. The members of parliament found that has been delegated manually, maybe the representatives of the local governments in courts, how the corruption schemes work there, social sphere, education, so on and so forth. So basically, each of the schemes, they describe the problem of the scheme and they describe what are the reasons for those schemes. Why does it exist? And as Rodion has already said, then we can fight the moral qualities of people for the longest period of time. But if our cities that do not have the scheme for the so-called temporarily buildings locations, for example, the small architectural forms, for example, that are located around the metro stations, they have to be placed in some certain schemes. If we do not have these certain schemes, then they can only be placed and located manually, and everyone doing what they want. It's mostly being curated by the local members of local governments. Most of them have their own small architectural forms and that they're placing there. So basically, how do we verify that? Providing trading, it's not really training, it's not really active, it's not really effective. So in this case, then you have to just provide and create the scheme of the temporary location of the temporary buildings. Then you can have to publish that and you should follow this strict scheme. You cannot just fight the corruptions with only training or instructing. You have to have some certain tools available and keep on working according to the certain regulations that can be developed. We have described those cases in this publication. We do not provide the specific ways of how you can prevent this corruptional scheme, but this is the type of the publication. This solutions on resolving these corruptional schemes, then this is have to be worked on it. But you have a clear understanding and clear note. So what is the problem that causes this corruptional risks? So you can understand how you can mitigate and how you can stop this corruptional risks from appearing. Why we have investigated these schemes that can be very useful for many professionals. For example, an ICP can use this book in order to analyze those corruptional risks that are there and to work on the preventive measures locally. They can be very good for the deputies of the local councils, for the journalists. And my big dream is that, for example, we will be creating a network. The network is almost created and it will be enforced and empowered. A network that will work on those preventive measures and would exchange the best of their experience. Because yes, we are looking for the best regulations locally. Someone has better, someone has more effective, someone has, for example, in Kiev, we had the competition procedures of the head of the public utilities enterprises, that have been appointed before, but they can be as well chosen according to the competition procedure. We have worked on this procedure and we have exchanged this experience with other cities, and now those kind of competitions are being held in other cities as well. So if you had some really good experience and would share that, then we would not reinvent the wheel every time. We would do the good businesses together. After we have created these publications together with our partners, we have had 6 online webinars on the people responsible for preventing corruption. So those are the internal anti-corruptionals in the governmental institutions. I do hope that they're with us today in our today's meetings. We've had this 3 main directions for this event. So the land relations, the property issues, and the construction issues. A lot of schemes concerning the land use. We have spoken about that as well, and there's some certain schemes we've had some demands, and our colleagues have identified after this seminar of how, for example, we're distributing the land plots between the participants of the ATO. Let us as well share this experience on these cases for us to prevent corruption in these directions. The lack of the registration of the property, the abuse of the municipal properties, the rent of the municipal property, so on and so forth. And there, of course, are lots of the corruption schemes in the city construction sphere. We know that how many illegal buildings we have. There's a lot of schemes over there. We had 158 participants in those events for this event. And right now, I do believe that as the result of this webinars, we have had some very good product ideas worked on, because we have basically throughout working on those webinars, we have identified the corruption risks, the corruption problems, and how we can mitigate and take down these corruption risks. So we have already built up these certain chapters for the anti-corruption programs. And now all of you all over Ukraine will be able to receive the templates, ready-made templates, and some good offers of how you can take down those corruption risks. You can just, copy the line, put it into your anti-corruption plan, and the most important later on, implement it. As the results of the trainings that we had, and the colleagues have identified it as well, so we've had some certain problems that would like to be considered. We have seen that there is, of course, the problems with the landlords for the social needs. They have to learn how to do that. That has very good format that we have offered for that. We had a very good feedback and a very good evaluations of the event itself. Then the unused lots of how they can be delegated to rent, the corruptions in the medical establishments, the procurement and the protection from the fraud in procurement, the social sphere, so on and so forth. We also had a demand for the newbies of how when the person only starts their career and being a representative of the intercorruptional development, and now we have a lot of amalgamated communities created, so we have new people coming. They need to know how to work, and we would really like to help them to deal with all of the main emphasizes with their work and to help them to deal with the main tasks for their work. We have really good feedback. The participants have identified that there has been a very good increase of their knowledge after the training that has been completed, and they're ready to advise their colleagues to work with us as well. I would like to say that working on implementing the anti-corruption programs, in our opinion, can be the joining force for the civil society, for all of the civil society organizations. Once again, joining the representatives of the anti-corruption measures, for the progressive deputies and members of parliament, the progressive representatives of the public institutions and the self-governance. And in order for it to be effective, we need to change the approaches in developing the anti-corruption programs, and we need to empower the corresponding professionals. There are the big heroes because sometimes they're fighting against systems on their own. And basically, yes, they need to have the good anti-corruptional tools and good anti-corruptional programs. The civil society has to help them, and all of our activities have to help them too. Thank you very much for your attention, and I do hope that we will continue in working on those projects in implementing those measures and those measures that we have identified that will help us fight corruption. Thank you, Oksana, for a very good presentation. Thank you very much. And I would like to ask you to very briefly answer me the question, why 100 corruption schemes? Do you think there are more than 100 schemes? For example, I know there are new schemes rising connected to the vaccination already. For example, when there is this possibility that the vaccines are going to be resold, and whether you're going to broaden in this publication. Well, I think that there's 100 schemes that are really on the surface. And I think that it will be very important for all of us to take a look at sphere by sphere. For example, working like 100 schemes in ecology, 100 schemes in social spheres, 100 schemes in medicine. So the most important for us is to work on those preventive measures and to have our joint efforts to prevent it. So for everyone not to reinvent the wheel over and over again. Thank you very much for this comment. Okay, then let's switch to our next speaker. Please welcome Nazar Hrom, the head of the project of the crisis coordination and management in Ukraine. Nazar is representing UNDP in Ukraine. So please, Nazar, the floor is yours. We really would like to know how the donor organizations are supporting the anti-corruption initiatives in the regions, and with the eyes of the donor organizations, how do you see corruption locally? Thank you very much, Serhi. It's a pleasure for me to be here today with you. I do believe that the most effective way to fight corruption is communication. And I really like this approach that you have had interviews, because when in one panel we have the representatives of the international organization, the government, the social society, it's very important we have this synergy, because everyone can speak on the same level, learn from one another and help one another. It is very important for all of us to understand that the donors organizations in Ukraine, they're helping the government of Ukraine, they're helping to empower the institutions of the civil society in order to see some certain effects. I really like to be later on in the discussion just to learn from what our colleagues are going to say, to learn what I can use that as well. And I really like the what Yulia has said, that the corruption differs from the local level and the national level, and that's right. You are working on the local level and working on the national level, supporting the national institutions, the government, the national institutions on preventing corruptions. We know that everything that's happening on the national level is very much different to the local corruption. And it is even more different than what is going on the levels of the certain localities, because it has certain rules, certain procedures. And this is the key point that we have to start with when we're going to work to regions. We had lots of experience, we have a lot of experience of working and collaborating with the regions, and being based on this experience that has been introduced to us, we understand it. We know that every city has to have their own language. It has to be spoken to in a very different way. Every amalgamated community, there's no specific procedures or keywords that you have to use for everyone. And that is what is important, what Oksana has said as well. We should not reinvent the wheel all the time, because it exists already. We should just have to take it, consider, and work with the best ideas possible, because this is what we're working with, to create the best approaches, that will give us the opportunity to improve the local processes. And that is why it is very important for us not to try to amend everything. We can use whatever has already been worked before us. And the our program works not only in Ukraine, it works all over the world. We are supporting the numbers of different initiatives in Ukraine and all over the world. It's a very good initiative that our organization has been supporting in the east of Ukraine, the initiative on the so-called Integrity Islands. So if it just very briefly, that's a very interesting case. We have the La Paz city in Bolivia, and basically when the mayor has come, the city has been devastated. Basically, he really wanted to try out his powers. When he got to this position, he just was a little bit puzzled with what to start with. And what is very important to know, you need to have a good team. You have to build your goal. You have to build your goal, and you have to find your team, your ideas to fit these goals. And in this case, in this idea, the mayor has built the team in the city council that has been made of 10 people, and those 10 people have been very progressive people, and they have been really promoting the idea of integrity and transparency. So every one of us can be this island of integrity working on the local level. We can be this island of integrity. We can show our colleagues what is the best way to do, how the best way to perform our actions. We have started it in Novopskov, and together with the local city council, we really wanted to work of how you can become this island of integrity. That's a very good initiative. That was one of our first initiatives. Of course, all over the world and in Ukraine, we have many different methodologies. There are like the Integrity City that has been implemented by the Anti-Corruption Initiative of the European Union in Ukraine, that has been working in 5 cities in Ukraine. There are some initiatives like the Anti-Corruption Champions. So there are many initiatives available, but they're basically being based on one thing: the collaboration have to be based on the managerial level. We need to have some partners who will be working with us from the side of the state, from the side of the city in these cases. So in order to have some certain result, the local authorities, the authorities of any kind of amalgamated community, they have to be interested in having these results in place. And if we will consider another interesting example, for example, when we have introduced the anti-corruption initiative from the European Union to once again to implement their directions of the city of integrity, we have been working in 3 cities: Zhytomyr, Chervonograd, and we have as well been working in Nikopol for the Dnipro region. And working in every cities, everything changes. So basically the main idea was to create the integrity plan. If we know that the local city administration, they should approve this anti-corruptional programs, but sometimes it never moves further on. There is no like preconditions that, for example, the city council or any other authorities have to provide this anti-corruption program on their level. We really wanted to try it out, to pilot it. We really wanted to create something that will resemble the anti-corruption program, but will not naming it as the anti-corruption program. So we will not have certain misunderstanding because, the lawyers are always the lawyers. When they're reading out the anti-corruption program, they say like, the law does not presuppose that. Why should we do that? So we had this idea to create the plan of integrity. We're calling it the integrity plan, but this is basically the anti-corruption program with a little bit updated way. It would be very interesting to listen to Olga's presentations and Rodion presentations on what you have achieved in analyzing the anti-corruption program. And Rodion has said the most important thing, that anti-corruption programs have been implemented, but they have been implemented mostly as templates. They're all standardized, there's no monitoring, there's no way to track the results. So when we have had this plan of integrity in those cities, then one of the idea was to create the monitoring overall for the implementation of this project, so that the city would have a specific person that will be responsible to track on what has been done, what hasn't been done, and to provide certain liabilities for that. That has been acknowledged at the certain sessions, and when in the city councils, the executive committees, they have seen that, for example, the measures have not been implemented, then there will be certain punishment, certain liability, like disciplinary liability or whatever. Then you will have some certain results. So that is why I do believe that in this process, we need to engage the NICP, because the NICP is the body that built up the anti-corruption policies in Ukraine. And this is the authority that has to help the representatives, the local representatives, work on that. And it is very important for us to have the representatives of the NCP in this discussion, because we see their interest in that. We see their interest in changing the environment that the local communities are functioning in, that the city communities are functioning in. On the donor support, the donors will be always supporting the civil society organizations, the Institute of the Civil Society, and that is why the UNDP program has supported the creation of the hubs all over Ukraine, that we're trying to widespread the knowledge that we already know. And this is a very important notion for us to have some certain beneficiaries to that, for us to have the group of interest that will take this knowledge. We have a lot of trainings, a lot of cases being held, but we have to understand that the institutional memories, as for example, any kind of institution, state institutions or private institution, there has to be that. There has to be the person who will be delivered with all of those results of work, because many times there's something that we're lacking. Covering the other issues of how do we see the corruptions in the regions, I would agree to the previous speakers. The corruption, there's different region-wise, there's different corruptions on the regional level and national level. There's difference in the spheres, because as Oksana has said, there's 100 corruptional risks or 100 corruptional schemes that we can identify in every specific sphere, in architecture, in construction, in any sphere. We know that there's a lot of those. You can broaden that further on. And all of the colleagues who are here today, they know that from their own experience, working in their own cities, working with their own authorities, working on that, knowing how it is. Everyone knows how it can be improved. So it's very important to have the really strong partners here to follow the institutions. What do we see as the problem sometimes on the level of the local organizations? When we are working on the local level and national level, then we have the good experts, the good institutions of the civil society. But when we get to the level of the local councils, to the level of the amalgamated communities, we do not see the partners we can work with to work on the changes. So sometimes it is the resource that lacking, the human resource that is lacking for us to help us to implement certain things, because it's really hard only to work with the regional authorities, local authorities. In order to work properly, we need to work with synergy with the representative of the civil society and with the representatives of the local authorities and the city councils. Another problem that we have seen as well, the lack of the political will. It is always there. We can have the political will on the national level, but we might not have this political will on the regional level or the local level, there's always some people who do not need that, who do not want to do that, or it is even unreasonable to do that. So we need to search for some certain political support not always on the national level, but on the regional level. For example, when we had our Cities of Integrity project, so we had this big city, Zhytomyr and Chervonograd and Nikopol, as two smaller towns, and we had this political support from the mayors, and we've understood that the executive bodies, executives, committees, they're ready to work. They're ready to work because it has been a public declaration for the mayors that yes, we're ready to do that and we have to support that. So yes, we have to keep on searching for the partners all the time. But in the same time, when we had this integrity cities, so we've had the political support and we were not really close to understanding while we're working with the different municipal enterprises. We have engaged the representatives of the civil society. We have noted down that not all of the representatives of the civil society were ready to join us. We understand that, when we come to the city, we might not know of everything what's going on inside. But the representatives of the civil society who have been working in this region for the longest period of time, they know more. They know more and they're much more engaged into process. So we need to search for a stronger partner on the level of civil society as well. When you can work in synergy, it is important another moment that there are some certain problems and there are some mechanisms of the local democracy that has been presupposed of how you can engage the civil society, the people for decision making, but there are mechanisms that are not always working. One of the examples to the public hearings that take place, the city halls, the public hearing, that's a very good initiative that exists, but sometimes they're only being used in order to cover up any kind of decision making. So many of those initiatives that are being only done for the record. And I do believe that building up the anti-corruption programs in this case, at least those things that have been done before. And I know that NICP is currently working on changing the approaches to everything that has been done and the approaches on preparing the anti-corruption plans. But what has been done before, the anti-corruption programs, very frequently, even if we analyze the national level, the ministry have just copied the standard anti-corruption programs. They've just included that and they have just provided it to the approval of the city. The NICP is currently working on improve the situation and is very good for us because we can see some certain changes. The same is being done in the regional level. When there are some certain problems appearing, the colleagues that are contacting one another and they're sending the very same copy, the very same anti-corruption program, they show the very same anti-corruption risks from year to year. So that is very important to search for the additional support, for additional communications with NICP that are currently building up new approaches and new visions so that the representatives of the state authorities, local state authorities, the head of the local departments would be working more effectively. The recent years, I do believe that our legislation has presupposed really nicely the collaboration, the existence of the certain departments, authoritative departments or the authorized people. But we do not have the regulations of how these authority people are going to be appointed. We don't have any protections for those people in those positions. So, those people can be appointed, but they can be fired as easy as well. So the NICP only works on the national level, and I'm not sure that whether NICP is going to be protecting their workers more better on the local level. So what we have seen from the side of the international community, that it's a good institution, the authorized people, but they are not going to be working effectively because they can be the subject of the political pressure or any kind of pressure from the side of their management and executives. That can be a problem as well. So this is the key moments we can discuss more and more because there are much more moments to discuss as well, but not to take the time because I do believe the communication and discussion can bring us back to the better decisions altogether. Thank you, Nazar. Thank you, Nazar, for your presentation. Thank you for your speech. We have now seen that there is a desire for the donors organizations in Ukraine to help not only the civil society in Ukraine, but also to support the representatives of the authority, to help the institutions and bodies that are waiting for the initiative and the desire to be working. So yes, we have a lot of people who are authorized to fight against corruption. So if you would like to continue in working, then the civil society and the donor organizations are going to support you with that. So please use your chances to build up this collaboration. the final speaker for our today's first panel, and I would like to pass the floor to Serhii Derkach, the head of the Department of Prevention and Detection of Corruptions of the NACP of Ukraine. And you know, they have a lot of questions already addressed to you, the ones that I even see in the chat box. So the first question would be, can you please tell us in what way the NAPC works with corruption prevention in the regions, that very broad one?
Дня, радий всіх чути, бачити. По-перше, хочу подякувати.
Dear colleagues, good day. I'm really pleasure for me to be here today. I would like to thank the organizers because these discussions are very important, especially on preventing the corruptions on the local level. Because as an institution that builds up the state policies, we are basically working with the local authorities and the national authorities, but we understand that the local governments and local authorities, they do not have all of the needed attention even in this framework, but we want to change this approach. And it's very, very cool that you are having this project all together and we're collaborating with you. And we do hope that we're going to have the very good collaboration in preventing corruption in the local governments. In all of the presentations, I have had the NACP, and in the comments I have read there's always NACP addressed. I will try to very, very briefly give you the understanding of what the NACP does. What are the plans for NACP? But I would like to tell you the very first thing that the NACP is not a magic pill of preventing corruption for all over the country. And I'm going to give you a couple of words explaining why, and I will give you the identification who has to deal with the issues of corruption except for the NACP on the local levels as well. The first thing that I want to say, and I would like to say that we know it all, but we know that from the position of the governmental bodies that works on preventing corruption. On behalf of our enterprise, on behalf of our organization, I would like to say that the decentralization reform that is currently taking place, it has to kill out the corruptional risks on the state level and to kill out the corruptional risks on the local levels as well. So the local authorities are restoring this function that they've had, that's the functions, some of the controlling functions that have been firstly earlier dedicated to the state bodies. But if we're speaking about mitigating corruptions on the state level and the local level, then we are speaking about the possible empowerment and enhancement of the corruptional risks for the local councils right now. For example, the budgets have been now redirected to the localities. So there's also some certain pressure for the local authorities and how they will manage those money flows. So we have to do everything in our efforts in order to prevent the corruptional risks from rising in the local self-governance institutions. Speaking on NACP, if I may, I would like to share my presentation with you. If the host will let me. Yes, we can see your presentation. We can see that your presentation already on the screen. Yes. Great. I would let's start the slideshow right now. Yes, we can see it. Perfect. Great. So the first thing that I really wanted to say that on the all national level, the NACP has been working in creating this complex framework document that will be the main for the development of this is the main document for the anti-corruption activities of the country, the anti-corruption strategy. The anti-corruption strategy has been through the first hearing for the first reading in the parliament. It's going to be a law. So basically we can see that there are some touching points for the strategies and action plans in this document. You can see there is references to the administrative and territorial reform that has to be considered into certain anti-corruptional measures to be taken. There are some certain understanding that the local self-government bodies are going to be working with an NACP in order to implement this anti-corruption strategy. The anti-corruption strategy as well presupposes the high-quality classifications of the anti-corruption risks, and we have already said about the anti-corruption programs on that. Will also try to empower the Institute of the Anti-Corruption Authorized public servants, and what Nazar has already said. And there's some certain instruments that being presupposed in the anti-corruptional strategies that will kill off some certain corruptional schemes. For example, we would like to increase the transparency of work in the local register. So there has to be the land registers, the city construction register. The more open registers we have, the less the corruption risks will be. Speaking on the NACP, the legislation and the local self-government bodies, we have already spoken about the overall institutions and the work of the authorized representatives. The authorized representatives, the law says that the local councils, the regional councils, they have to create this corresponding authorized department, and the authorized public servants have to be dedicated for the anti-corruptional work. Of course, we would really like to see in every local authority the person who is authorized to be responsible for the anti-corruptional activities. Maybe there will be just a person who knows well about the anti-corruptional legislation and the anti-corruptional activities and will have some certain mandate to prevent corruption. But in this subject, you can see that the draft law speaks that there has to be some certain authorized people responsible for the anti-corruptional activities. For all of the people who are just listening to us, and I see that we have a lot of authorized public servants who are already listening to us, and I know that we have a lot of representatives of the civil society as well. I would like to say that the authorized public servant to preventing corruption is a very high quality tool, let's put it this way, in preventing corruption in the certain self-governance body, in the local or the regional. Maybe right now this tool is not functioning ideally, but there are some certain issues that has to be covered as well. There is the institutional issue that has to be covered. So we're currently working on this idea that we would like to improve the independence of the local authorized people, because we have seen the cases when those authorized people that being appointed by their managers and they cannot fill in their obligations fully. Another issue is the professional training for these people. In our country, we do not have any specialized training on how to build the capacities of those authorized people. There are some certain anti-corruptional trainings, but there is no specific educational or training program for the authorized people. So our main tasks is to once again get those people prepared, and now we have around 10,000 people in different kind of organizations, in different establishments, and in different local organizations. So there's a lot of people who are working with that. So our desire from the NICP, we have provided the concept of the trainings, and we're going to be training the authorized people. So this basically, we're going to have these people in some certain spheres. We do believe that this is going to be the basically very good effective trainings, and I hope my colleagues are going to mention that as well. But we have already seen the very good interest for the people. First of all, had very big interest for the trainings and for these topics, and we will going to be continuing doing on that as well, providing the trainings. Speaking on the recent issue, the institutions of the authorized public servants in the framework of the anti-corruption strategy, in order to implement it, we have presupposed the independent position of the authorized people, so of the authorized public servants. We're going to be working on the mechanism of what is going to be the competition for the authorized public servants on the anti-corruption will be, providing them maybe operational and financial independence in the framework of their work as well. So we're considering these issues. This is what specifically on the authorized public servants in the anti-corruption. I would like to speak as well about some certain touch points. In what way we can work together. So I have been spoken about the anti-corruption strategy already, but I would like to say, in order to implement this operational anti-corruption strategy, we're going to have the implementation program approved as well. And in the program, we're going to be writing out the specific actions that have to be taken by the state institutions. And by the way, some of those are going to be corresponding to the local self-governance bodies with a certain indicators to be followed. And we're really sure that this is going to be the very good mechanisms for the changes to happen, for the changes to be implemented in order to increase the work and increase the effectiveness of work. strategic analysis of the risks, I do believe that this work has already been started in our department quite recently, and those are only the first steps, and those are the tools that can be already used as well. You have seen the publication that Oksana Velichko has already published for you. There's 100 scheme corruption skills and some other research that has already been provided with our support as well. We have started to work sphere by sphere. This year, what Nazar Hron has mentioned, we have understood that there are many spheres with corruptional risks, so we have to get in depth with that. So we've had a big research on 30 schemes in the land sphere, and in the land management, we're going to publish that as well here in the chat box. Just please use that as well. We have provided the certain cases in the land sphere with the real cases, examples, and with the criminal prosecutions that have already been started, that has already been delivered to the court as well. And we have provided the certain offers in order to mitigate and make this schemes impossible for the future. There are some very nice legislative offers that have been already provided. There are some certain offers, draft laws in the parliament. So we're going to be trying to support these draft laws that are actually promoting some certain corruptional schemes. On the authorized again, so once I've already said that they have to become the high quality preventers of the corruptions in the local self-governance and the local government bodies. What I want to mention in this direction as well, it's not that we're working with the authority of public servants in training them, we're providing the evaluations of their work as well. We have had the survey this year, and we're going to provide you the results of what is the results of their work. And we have surveyed the public servants and the authorized people for the anti-corruption measures. We haven't dealt with the local authorities yet, but you can see that from this survey of the public servants, how helpful that is for them, for their everyday work, the introduction of the authority of departments or authorized department on anti-corruption or the authorized position on the anti-corruption. We will finalize these results, I hope, through the March. Speaking for the we already know some people personally, the one who's authorized to work with anti-corruption directions. I would like to speak on the everyday coordination and the support of their work. In department, we have the department that is coordinating the work of the authorized public servants. If speaking about the self-government institutions, then there is a separate department of coordinating the work of the authorized persons in the local self-government. The representatives of this department, they provided the daily consultations and coordinations in the work for the authorized persons. So we are providing the methodological recommendations on a daily basis. For example, today we had some explanations on providing the confidentiality of the whistleblower and the mechanism of incentives that can be used for providing the information on possible corruption. Then I would like to switch to yet another very important tool for fighting corruption. This is basically the whistleblowers. I have had a lot of questions on the whistleblowers already here. And well, the first of thing I would like to say about that in speaking about the local self-governance institution. So the anti-corruptional work is a complex work. And a very important case here is not only about the authorized and not just the people specifically who are preventing the corruption, but this is the issue of every person and every citizen. This is the question of zero tolerance to the corruptional risks and the corruptional cases. So this is what we are asking for. This is the international standards, and this is our cry out and the best practices there in the world. When the citizens are not told that they have zero tolerance to corruption, and if some certain corruption actions are taking place and they identify it, they will as well tell us about that, or they will inform the state about that, and we will provide some certain protection to these people. We are working in developing the mechanism of protection to the whistleblowers. We had a really high quality approach to these issues. We have some certain amendments to the legislation on providing the protection to the whistleblowers. In the 70 cases, we are participating in protecting the whistleblowers when the third person has been worked as the protection of the whistleblowers. We have the cases when the whistleblowers have been restored in their positions. We have cases when the negative impact measures have been taken down from them, any kind of a disciplinary or like, for example, the vacation has not been taken or have had some disciplinary fees. So he's been working in high quality on this direction as well. And I would like to mention that the legal support of the whistleblowers is the case for the free of charge organizations in payment. We're currently working with these institutions in order to teach the lawyers on working with whistleblowers, how we can protect them with high quality wise. So I would like to address each and every one of you for all of you to be reporting on corruption in case you see those cases. And if you will feel that there is the need for you to protect your rights, feel free to address the local centers of the free legal aid. Speaking on the whistleblowers, speaking on the checkouts for how the work is being organized, I do believe that may be mostly interesting for the authorized as well, but I believe that the public has to hear that as well. That's this year, we're planning to check out not only the state institutions, but also the self-governance bodies on how they're organizing the work. We have the opportunity to have the planned monitorings and extraordinary monitoring. The plan will be published today or tomorrow. That the plan, this is going to be the annual plan of inspections by NICP, and there are the local self-governance bodies that we're going to check out this year as well. Throughout these inspections, we are checking out all of the work in preventing corruptions in 3 years. So if you as the citizens, you have an approved information that the certain violation has taken place, systematic violations of the anti-corruption legislation has taken place in very specific establishments, please address us. And we have the tool of the extraordinary inspection, so we can actually inspect any kind of institutions. Yes, so speaking on the digital tools, I would just to give a couple of words on the digital tools as well. We are planning to create a portal for the whistleblowers this year. This is going to be a unified resource where all of the whistleblowers can inform about the actions taking place. We do hope that the legislation is going to be the law that's going to be signed by the president quite soon. It has already been provided for the presidents to sign it. The draft law is not ideal, really. There are some certain amendments that, let's put it this way, that creates the legal uncertainty. But with that, we're starting, at least we're launching the portal for the whistleblowers. And the final digital tool that I would like to mention as well, this is the anti-corruption portal. We're working on that. We really want to have all of the information on the anti-corruption work in Ukraine to be open, to be public, so that every citizen of Ukraine will come up to the site to see the authorized person, find their contact, will have this opportunity to receive the feedback, to have this forum for the further on discussion so we can exchange information on the anti-corruption work. That is very briefly on our activities and the work that we're currently doing. Finally, two theses that I wanted to say, that it's basically the work, the anti-corruption work, and I will switch the slides here, preventing corruption. It's not only needed by the state, it is needed by the certain community as well. And so in order to stop the corruption in actions, we need some certain tools and the people responsible for that. We have to understand it clearly that the heads of the local self-governance bodies, they should dedicate some certain attention, provide the resources for the anti-corruption activities as well. Without it, it will be really hard for us to fight corruption locally. So the first of all, it is the tasks for the managers, for the authorized public servant, and for the public society, civil society, that will control based on the three components, that will be controlling that and will providing the effective work in the anti-corruption sphere. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for your presentation. There are two important issues on the safety of the whistleblowers that you have mentioned that, but that's a very interesting issue here. This is again the mechanisms of the protection of the local self-governments. What kind of mechanism do you have in protecting the whistleblowers? You can actually stay with us till the end, or you can just already speak about it right now. Yes, I will just very briefly say that for the NACP, there's the only one preventive measures that can be used is providing the agreement to fire the authorized anti-corruptional officer. This is basically the person cannot be fired if it has been by the initiative of the main executive. That can only be done with the accordance and with the agreement with NACP. But we have some certain cases when our authorized officers have been fired and out of their position, and the NACP is going to be reacting and responding to that as well. We do hope that this year we're going to have this opportunity to empower the independence of the authorized officers, and we'll have the opportunity to improve their independence. Thank you very much for your brief speech, and thank you very much for answering those questions. Thank you very much for providing their presentations and for answering the questions. I know that you have limited time and we have limited time, but it was very interesting for us to hear the representatives of the authorities. So if we have this opportunity for all our speakers to stay with us till the end of the discussion, and I would like to say that it will be closing closer to 12 o'clock, and maybe we will have some questions still. But I would like to pass the floor right now to Olesa Tkachuk, who's going to be moderating our second panel, and I do believe we should not take her time no more. So please, the representatives of Together Against the Corruption CSO, Olesa Tkachuk, please, the floor is yours. Yes, thank you, Serhii.
Сьогоднішньої дискусії. Я найперше зазначу, що у нас дійсно велика кількість учасників зараз.
Good day to all of you. We have a lot of participants in Zoom today. We are being watched in Facebook. And we will try to be very, very brief on this panel so that we would have the time for the questions and answers panel, because it's quite obvious that this amount of participants, this gives us the understanding that we have a very relevant conversation and we need to build up the dialogue after that. So I would like to mention that the topic of our second panel is on the need of fighting corruptions in the regions. We have 30 minutes to be speaking about that. So we have today with us Pavlo Lisnichenko, the Center of Media Investigation Prozoro, Uliana Fedorovich, the Chief Specialist and Analyst on the Integrity and Prevention of Corruption Sector of the Lviv City Council, Ms. Olga Hurina, the Head of the Department for Coordination of Anti-Corruption Units in the Field of Infrastructure and Social Sphere of the Department for Coordination of the Anti-Corruption Units and Implementation of the Anti-Corruption Programs of the NACP. And together with our colleagues, we're going to be talking today about the need for fighting corruptions in the regions. Of course, this topic is aimed at us discussing about the real situation with anti-corruption on the local level. Maybe we can identify some certain moments that we can empower or create in order to build up the good self-governments for this local civil society, for us to be working in synergy for the best of results, but not only for the process sake. I would like to now ask Pavlo. You are an investigative journalist. You have been working with informational campaigns in the regions, and your organization is a part of the coalition of the anti-corruptional civil society organization that have analyzed the programs, anti-corruptional programs that has been mentioned in the panel number 1. Thus, you are very aware of those practical aspects of corruption preventions in locations locally. So the question is for you. So what is right now the situation with how the civil society prevents the corruptions in the regions, and what, in your opinion, the key measures that the civil society can take for the anti-corruption measures to be effective? Please, you have 10 minutes. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Good day. I'm welcoming everyone from Kropyvnytsky city. Well, basically, the situations in the regions with the anti-corruption component has always been very hard. And this is not the problem of the lack of opportunities, but always the problem of the lack of people who are going to be working on that. And there are a couple of aspects here as well. So on one hand, there is certain monopolization of those processes, understanding that for most of the people that has been the newly created topics, so the journalists, that the lawyers, the civil activists that have been doing that out of their daily work. There is some certain resistance from the local authorities as well and authorities overall, because for this category of people, any kind of active position, the activism aimed on the anti-corruption activities is not really acceptable for them in any kind of measures. For Kropivnitsky, the situation with the anti-corruption is quite simple. We have a number of really civil society organizations that are working on their issues in the certain sectors. They have some people covering the land management issues, some people covering the ecological and environmental issues. In our case, I represent the organization that is specialized in identifying the corruptional facts in the public procurement and then again claiming and for these processes. But as a journalist, for me, I'm much more interested and much more emphasizing those moments that I can bring to light than for the further on taking it into their logical finale. So in this case, I'm really being helped with this opportunity to collaborate between many different civil society organizations, the opportunity to work between different sectors that have been working in their own ways. For example, if I'm only uncovering those details, then there will be the other organization that will be dealing with the legal component of that. Another organization will be working with advocacy. So I do believe that this is the very best opportunity that this kind of collaboration that we can see now provides, the consolidations from the different institutions from the civil society and on one hand, and the representatives of the authorities that can influence on those processes. Speaking on problems, the problems or the challenges, in my opinion, the main challenge and the main problem at this moment is the lack of the needed amount of platforms for communication, the lack of the communicated opportunities that will give the opportunity to unite the civil activists that are really differentiated now around the regions, especially speaking on some smaller cities and smaller towns. Considering even Kropivnitsky, even though it's a regional center, it's still a quite a small city compared to some other regions as well. So creating the platforms when the people who are not really aware with the overall situation all over the country, but have a clear understanding what has to be changed in the regions, that is very important. Well, first of all, it will give you this opportunity not to duplicate the organizations, but to deal with your very specific cases, to help with your very specific situations, but not creating some similar organization that will have the different approach to one situation. On the other hand, it will give you this opportunity to find your colleagues and in some way, I don't know, I can't call it friends, but to find this network of people who are also sharing our values all together with us, and to improve the anti-corruption situation in the region. So that is why it is a very important meeting for me today, this opportunity of creating this kind of meetings further on. Then I do believe that this is the best thing that has to be developed right now and has to have the more attention right now. Additionally, what is as well very important right now, that this is the development of the certain toolkits. So developing certain analytical tools, developing on the local level and on the overall national level, creating the certain toolkits, and the maximum use of it, the maximum centralization of it. So where everyone who has this desire or opportunity to join this fight, so everyone who would like to do that, to join this fight, so they would receive the package of knowledge and opportunities in one place, to talk to your colleagues, to have some certain experience, exchange of thoughts, to have some certain feedback from your work. On one hand, what is good about that, that you can take a look at those results that you have already had in some certain regions, for example, with the very same investigation on and research on the corruptional schemes for in the overall national scope, just to check out what are the problems in other regions, and whether we can just, delegate it to our translate it into our regions. Do we have problems in this case or no? This kind of communication gives this opportunity for some certain psychological comfort as well, because, as I've already said, we are very differentiated, as I've said before. So, and as Denis Bihus have said before, the criminals are organized, but we are disoriented and disorganized. So the most important thing is for us to get organized, to get together, to have this joint informational, technical, and even psychological support for us to understand that we're not alone. We're working on that. Everyone is working in their own city, in their own village, in their own region, but there is a lot of us working actually together. So this fact that, we have around 100 people here already, it gives us the understanding that, it's not kind of a local event or local fight, a local struggle anymore. It is a project. It is the certain collaboration that is relevant for all of the territory of Ukraine, and that's very important. That's all from my side. Thank you. Thank you, Pavlo. And on my side, I would like to support for everything that you've said, because of course, the issue of networking, the issues of partnership, the issues of getting together and joining your efforts, it's a very important and very important for all of the regions when we don't have a lot of active people and they're always under certain pressure. The pressure from the local authorities, the pressure from the society that we need to deliver the certain problems to. And just to complete this conversation, I would like to invite Uliana Fedorovich, who's representing the sector on integrity, on the corruption prevention in Lviv City Council. Uliana, as far as you are implementing the anti-corruptional measures from the inside of your local community authorities, so I would like to ask you to comment, first of all, on fighting corruption on behalf of the local communities council, and how are you going, in your opinion, addressing the comment of Pavlo about networking and partnership. So what is going on in your regions in collaborating with the civil society and the anti-corruptional sphere? And what would you like to change in this direction possibly? 10 minutes is yours, please.
Хвилин вкластись. Я що хочу з чого почати, що
Good day. I hope I will manage to make it in 10 minutes, but I would like to start that we're slightly different than all of the other authority departments. We have been created in 2018 with the initiative of the Lviv City Council before the amendment to the legislation have been approved. So we have some certain experience already that we can share. Before I will answer the questions on the collaboration and networking overall, what I really wanted to say, I really wanted to draw your attention to those challenges and those needs that are for the local communities in fighting corruption, for example. So is the corruption possible in the local authorities? Yes, of course, the corruption is possible. Every time you have the access to the resources and the authority to manage the resources, there are some corruption risks. There are some corruption risks and corruption opportunities available. Whether these opportunities are being used, then this is the issues of investigation of the corruption risks. The full investigation, for example, that has been provided by the journalist and the civil society organization. At this very moment, our department does not conduct the full scope investigations, but we have already prepared the certain prerequisites, and we're ready to show that, for example, we have a notification channel that can be used by both the public office, the public servants, public officers, and the citizens. So in order to launch this investigation directions, we need to provide a certain training to have the specific recommendations and order of how this kind of investigation takes place. So there is some certain preparatory work, and this is our main need and main challenge for us right now. We're looking for the opportunities to find the experts that will provide a certain training for us. Speaking on fighting corruption overall in complex, then one of the most important part of it is the prevention of corruption. We have spoken about that a lot already, and this is what our structural department is now doing in the Lviv City Council. What are the mechanisms of preventing corruption? There are many mechanisms of that. For example, improving the level of the awareness of the population, providing the needed tools, the transparency of the procedures that can prevent corruption. I would like to concentrate on the two main of those. Those are the two main things that we're currently facing. There is a huge number of the directions that the authority covers. They're covering a lot of activity that has to be analyzed and researched. We have analyzed the risks in the procurement. We have provided a certain amount of recommendations. Right now, we have to analyze how it's going to be implemented, to provide a secondary analysis and research to just evaluate the effectiveness of the recommendations being provided. This year, we're going to be doing the same with the municipally owned property. We understand that there's a work for more years to come, but the activities of the local governments is once again managing the land, which has the most of the corruptional risks there. There is the question of the employee, of the staff, the medicine, the healthcare issues, and the transportation issues. So there is a very big scope of work that we have to cover, and a high demand of the population to make the changes happen as soon as possible. And another problem is the unfinished decentralization, and there is unclear mandate for the city council. The city council is not able to refer the issues that will influence the life of the population locally. Some of the issues on, for example, preserving the cultural legacies or additional issues, they already has the reputation of being corrupted. So they're providing the corruption violations, but they provide some certain permissions. They're being doing that to cause harm to the community, and the local authority can do nothing about that without the certain amendments to the legislation to be approved. And these changes and amendments, they have to be lobbied with the joint efforts. The authorized officers and the authorized departments of preventing corruptions and the civil society organization that work in this sphere have to join their efforts. The research that you have conducted is 100 corruptional schemes, and the further on work on those schemes and designing and describing the corruptional risks are the very good example of this joint work and joint collaboration in this case. With the help of this research, we have a new need rising to creating the project solutions that will help us to undertake these corruptional risks. Like, for example, in this research, there is a corruptional scheme in the land management when the rent agreement ends up, and you have to re-sign this agreement once again. That never happens. And the public officers, there's going to be only providing these negotiations with the rentier, that this payment is going to be outside the budget and much cheaper. The research says why this scheme is possible. There are some certain prerequisites that makes this scheme possible. And those are prerequisites like, for example, the lack of control and the covered up rent agreements, the lack of transparency. In order to make this scheme impossible, we need to have a decision of the local authority that will be approved by the local deputies. This draft decision will presuppose that there will be the control on the rent agreement there and providing the public access for the rent agreements for the public. We have to work on these draft laws and draft solutions in many different directions. They have been identified in the research as well. And if we would have done it in Lviv, then we would share this experience to all of the cities of Ukraine. So once again, we're saying about the needs for the network and the further on communication, the need for changing this experience and communication and those achievements. We are collaborating with the civil society organization all the time for quite a long period of time already. We have been working on the ethical behavior code together with our community. We have been working on this for a year. We had different consultations and working groups. We are working on the procurement with the Civil Center of Monitoring and Research that provide the training for all of our public offices on that. So we are constantly working with the civil society. And without the organizations like that, there was much lesser that we could do. Thank you for your attention. Well, thank you, Uliana. Thank you, Uliana. Commenting on your thesis, I would like to address our participants that we have for the representatives of the local authorities and the state institutions. So, dear colleagues, if you're ready to work on some certain solutions, for example, to continue what Uliana has said on building the typical or the frame projects for the resolutions of the city councils to resolve some certain issues, or if you are interested in developing the certain anti-corruptional programs together, if you're ready to provide the advocacy for these anti-corruptional programs, please let us know. We're looking for the partners in the state authorities. You have our contacts for all of these for all of the speakers that we've had in the previous panels, the anti-corruptional headquarters together against corruptions. So please, we'll be really happy to hear from you. But getting back to what Uliana has said on the networking, on partnership and the expertise, I think we will continue in discussing it that together with Olha Hurin and the representatives of Department of the Prevention and Detection of Corruption of ANPC of Ukraine. So why? Because basically, Olga, you have been participating in those webinars for the authorized officers in preventing corruption. We have been working with the authorized officers on the practical issues and the practical tasks. We were looking for the solutions for some certain corruptional risks. So basically, we have created those many projects for the further on development and chapters of the anti-corruptional programs. In your opinion, this training has been aiming to improve the expertise of the authorized officers. Now, having talked to them, do you believe that their knowledge has increased? From your point of view, what can be the further on priorities for this kind of training to be conducted? And if we will have some more time, can you please as well comment on the anti-corruptional programs? Because we have been discussing a lot of that right now, and we have agreed that the way they look right now, it's really hard to call those anti-corruptional programs effective. And if we will refer to some certain research, though, for example, the analysis that we have conducted as well, a lot of anti-corruptional programs are really hard to track. The effectiveness is impossible to track because there are no steps of how you can evaluate those. On those issues, can we just have your point of view in the next 10 minutes, please? Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I would like to welcome all of the participants and greet all of the participants of our today's event. I would like to thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to speak today. As a comment, Lesu, for what you have said and what you have asked, I would like to start with saying that yes, the webinars is a very effective tool to improve the effectiveness of work of the authorized officers, to improve their expertise. And further on in my presentation, I'm going to tell you what is our going to be our next steps in this direction. So right now, today I would like to tell you about the high priority directions in the training for the authorized officers and how we can improve their expertise. In 2020, the national agency has had the analytical research of the educational need and the overall situation of the preparations for the office for the authorized officers. The results have been published at the site of the NACP as a concept of the training for the local department in preventing and detecting corruption. This research has given us the understanding how we're going to have the overall overall development of the training session, understanding the needs for the community of the authorized officers. I would like to say, based on the anonymous expertise survey that we've had before the training, the level of the expertise and the capacities of the authorized officers of all of the level was lower than average. So the main aim for the training was to build the professional competence, the expertise of the authorities of the authorized officers, the communities of the authorized officers. Quite recently, we have developed the needs for the competences for the people uh, who are competing to become the authorized officers in preventing and detecting corruption. So the integrity, the good managing experiences, analytical knowledge, and effective coordination with other people, the goal-orientedness, good communicational skills that has been mentioned a lot by all of the participants of our today's event. I will send it to the chat, all of the references to those methodological recommendations. The educational needs for the authorized officers and their very modest level of the professional competences required a very significant relaunch of the educational activities. We believe that the high quality education for the authorized officers, it has to be oriented for the practical use for the skills and knowledge in their collaboration overall. And by the way, Alessa, throughout this webinars, out of the 6 webinars, all of those tools that have been used there, the training has to be built not on the theoretical knowledge on only recreating the norms of legislation as it used to be before. They has to go through these practical forms of work and their discussion. We have decided to build up our training program on some certain levels. The basic level that will cover the main basic course of preparing the authorized officers that are only beginning their work on this position. The second is the expert level, the advanced level, that is going to be providing the professional competences for the authorized officers. For example, the head of the authorized departments, the public officers who have some certain experience already, and the anti-corruption level. The specialized level, the third level, that will combine the additional education products in the framework of the activities of the authorized officers. For example, using technological approach in analyzing analyzing counterparts, for example. The fourth level is the training T4T, the trainings for the trainers, the one who will be building the capacities of the authorized officers. Well, again, giving them the opportunity to train their colleagues as well. And this is going to be in the framework of the networking project as well. While we have developing the educational and training program, the NACP as well considers the differences between the conditions for the work of the different levels of the authorized officers. The one that have been working in the central institution, governmental institution, and the local and governmental institutions. We have very ambitious plan for this year. We're planning to launch the basic educational course for the anti-corruptional authorized officers in the public sector that will be comprised of 3 educational modules. Starting from the standards, preventing corruption, the second module is the professional of the anti-corruption authorized officers, and we are now implementing the project on building up the profession and the professional standards of the authorized officers on anti-corruption. The third module is the practical work of the anti-corruptional authorized officer. And we will have 2 educational courses on the specialized level on, once again, approving the projects by the authorized officers and analyzing the counterparts. From our experience and from those demands that have been sent to us, we see that there is the great need for improving those skills and empowering those directions of work by the authorized officers. And I would like to address all of the authorized officers to join this educational and training courses. We will be sending an invitation to each and every one of you to participate in those events and those webinars. Getting back once again to the practice of what the 6 webinars that we have held in the partnership with the anti-corruptional headquarters and the CSO Together Against Corruption. This month, we're going to send the results of our trainees. We're going to share it to all of the anti-corruption officers from all of the for all of the state institutions. We do hope that you will use these results that when you're going to be evaluating the corruptional risks in the sphere of your activities. And moreover, those people, those of you who are participating in the preparation of the anti-corruptional programs, we would really like to see you using those results while you've been preparing those programs. And speaking on the anti-corruptional programs, this is one of the key tools for preventing corruption in the state institutions that identifies the main basis of the implementations of the overall policies on preventing corruption for the state institutions and local self-government institutions, and has been said before. The high quality preparation of the programs and good implementation is going to be the basis for creating an effective system of prevention corruption in all of the spheres of activities of the local authorities. The practice of improvement by the NACP of the anti-corruption programs, the analytical research by the civil society organizations, understanding the results of all of the previous research has shown that there is not enough readiness for the local authorities for independent and in-depth analysis of their corruption risks. Even though that the model of preparing the anti-corruption program has been now implemented in regulation starting from 2018, most of the subjects that are approving the anti-corruption program, they are only formally evaluating their corruptional risks. And I would agree to the experts of the anti-corruption headquarters. Unfortunately, this is what happening. For example, unclear identification of the anti-corruption risks, the measures that can be taken to prevent them. Most of the anti-corruption programs of the local authorities have these flows. And as it has already been said, sometimes this prerequisites are only limited to some subjective issues, like, for example, the lack of integrity by the public servants in public offices. That's not like that. They can only be this prerequisite can only be used together with some other practical prerequisites and the conditions that make the corruption risk possible. And of course, there is the Commission on Evaluating the risks of the local councils. They're limiting the identification of the corruption risks in only organizational management sphere of the local authorities, not identifying the certain spheres, for example, the educational sphere, healthcare sphere, or the management of the municipally owned property, the transport provision, the land management, and the construction businesses. There's a lot of spheres that can be named like that. Unfortunately, we do not see them depicted in the anti-corruptional programs of the local communities and local authorities. The national agency does not participate in the evaluation of the corruptional risks before the programs have been approved. The tools how we can influence that, for example, we can disapprove it with providing the certain recommendations for the further on amendment. We're using this tool quite frequently, providing the planned and extraordinary inspections of the state institutions of whether they correspond in the Article 19, which actually recommends to have the anti-corruption program for the state institutions and state government institutions, and providing them the mandatory recommendations. So we know that the effectiveness of the implementations of the program is on the responsibility of every state institution. And Nazarov has said that, like the head of this body, they have to provide the leadership in identifying the violations and provide the good results of their activity. Speaking on the plan for 2021, in order to improve the effectiveness of the anti-corruption program in the local council, we would like to improve and update the methodology of evaluating the corruption risks for the activities of the local government, to change the approaches to identify the corruption risks. And this methodology, this updated methodology, is going to be based on the best international standards. And those are the international standards like ISO 31000, 110 on the methods on the managing risks, 37001 on fighting the bribery. Moreover, answering your comment, Alyssa, we're planning to implement the pilot project on evaluating the corruptional risks in the governmental institutions of the regional level as well, not only in the central government, in order to check out the notions of the updated methodology and to provide the technical assistance to the authorized officers and the state institutions in identifying the corruptional risks in their activities. Moreover, we're planning to update the educational course on evaluating corruptional risks of the specialized level. And this course can be used by the authorized officers and by the representative of the civil society and experts in order to identify the corruptional risks and the activities of the local government. Moreover, we have a very ambitious project on developing the e-cabinet for the authorized persons that will include the two important modules, like, for example, the instrument for the tool for the evaluation of the professional risks and the tool in controlling the anti-corruptional programs implementation. It has been mentioned many times before, but unfortunately there are some certain problems in this direction. But what we plan is to actively develop this direction further on. So yes, right now we're still working in changing the priorities of the authorized officers because their main role is to managing the corruptional risks in their organizations where they're being represented. And just to wrap up, I would like to say that we're always open to collaboration because we know that implementing those ambitious plans and those ideas can only be possible with the help of the authorized officers, with the help of the civil society, with the help of the active positions of all of the citizens of Ukraine. Thank you for your attention. Well, thank you, Ola. Thank you, Ola. I believe that it has been a very important information for all of the authorized officers that are present here in our panel discussions, and that it has been a very good information for all of the participants, because we all agree that we really want to see the authorized officers as a certain change agents in their institutions, and that cannot be happen. It won't be possible if we will not improve the expertise of the authorized officers, if there will be no collaboration between the authorized officers, the civil society, and the support of the management that has been identified many times before as well. Understanding the numbers of participants, we will have some certain comments or questions for the speakers or the overall comments for the panel discussion. I would like to pass the floor to Ola Ivanova to moderate the questions. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Olesa. Thank you all of the participants. Thank you all of the speakers for both of the panels of our today's event, of our today's discussion. Yes, we will keep on moving further on with some certain issues and questions. We have 10 minutes and we would like to answer the questions that you've had. The first question was to the NACP. When the authorized officers and the head of the authorized officers, they're not doing anything to prevent corruption, what should the NACP do in this situation? So maybe the colleagues from the NACP are going to give us an answer in that. In this case, the national agency has a couple of mechanisms to do. First of all, providing the mandatory recommendation, for example, in case if the state institution of the central or the local regional level, if they didn't approve, for example, their anti-corruption program in place, so that is a violation of Ukrainian legislation. And if it is the violation of legislation, then our mandate is to provide a certain mandatory recommendation, and this mandatory recommendation is mandatory. So basically, if this person will not follow to our lawful claim, then they're going to be the administrative liability for that. And I see that Serhi would like to add up something. Yes, please. So maybe I would like to add up to the answer from the colleagues from the NACP. Yes, the NACP can work in the framework of the legislative mandate that they have, legislative authorities that they have. They cannot go throughout the framework. But there is the civil society, there is the CSOs, because you can see that there are representatives of the different NGOs and CSOs. If you see that the citizens city council does not do anything to prevent corruption, if you see there is no reaction from the authorized officers locally, because many times they are being very friendly with the heads of the executive power, you can address us as the civil society representatives. We have many different additional leverages to do that. For example, the claims or opportunity to provide the identification for the corruptional actions and the response for them. So if you have this fact, please give us, just give us a sign, just address us. We are basing all of our publications so that we're trying to mitigate this corruption with the help of our digital tools available for us. So we're ready to improve our work as well. So even if we are ready to develop this mechanism, the draft laws and norms in order to improve the mandate and the authorities of the NICP or other functions in order to give them more tools to prevent corruptions locally. So we're also open to collaboration, so let us know as well. Thank you, Serhi. We also have a question of how the authorized officers can manage risks if, for example, their independence is limited in everything. Because yes, there were a lot of questions and there was been a big discussion in the chat box that the authorized officers, they do not have the needed independence. They're still dependent on the state institutions they're working on. And basically, maybe that there is an issue for the brief answer from the NICP and the overall just for us to get that into attention, that we have to keep on developing this topic and working on this topic, trying to give more independence to the officers. What I want to say about that, yes, as my supervisor has been saying at the previous panel, so one of the tools that we see this problem. We see this problem and the project of the anti-corruption strategy that currently being delivered to the parliament, it presupposes that there is a need to review the mechanisms of the protection and the mechanism of independence of the authorized officers. We see certain problems there. We are not speaking only about the authorized for the state enterprises for the central level. Right now, for the authorized officers who work in the region, there is some certain legal unclarity. And so, you know, in our circle, this is an active problem, and together with the experts and civil society, together with the authorized officers, we're going to be developing the amendments for the legislation in order to change the situation, in order to resolve these issues, because we are really interested in that. Because we see that it is something that has been expected of us, not only the participants of this event, but all of this community, all of the society. So we're going to be working on that in this direction as well. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the answer. And yes, I know that we are now being followed in Facebook as well, and there has been a lot of questions for our Facebook broadcast as well. And the questions on collaboration, the questions from the authorized officers and the civil activists. And I would like to mention that we're always open to collaboration. We're always searching for the new regional partners. And I would like to say that you can address us on Facebook with our emails. I would like to ask our colleagues to place our contacts in the chat in Facebook, because I've already has posted our contacts in the chat in Zoom. So you can just write us what is going to be the further collaboration in your activities and in your regions. And especially for the representatives of the local self-governance, I would like to address you as well. Do not be shy. Do not be afraid. You know, as the representatives of the civil society, we're not going to be only criticizing you, we're going to be collaborating with you. We really want to help you to work for some good results together. We really want to be developing together. We want to only add up to one another and grow together. On the question that we had on Facebook, we had this question about our representatives in Kherson. Unfortunately, we do not have the representatives there. We have the regional coordinators and our partners in Kherson, so we can get them contacts to you. Just let us know. The links, yes, we're going to be placing this recording of today's discussion. Yes, we had a question on whether this discussion is going to be recorded. Yes, the YouTube channel of the Anti-Corruption Headquarters. You will be able to see this discussion in both Ukrainian and English. The recording will be provided. Dear colleagues, do we have more questions that we would like to discuss? Maybe the questions on the anti-corruption programs. We have discussed the authorized officers a lot today. Maybe there are some certain questions on the coalition, how you can join the coalition, and what you can help us with. Yes, please. Yes, can I have a brief comment from our side? Yes, Olga, please. So once again, yes, I'm not going still the anti-corruption programs and the authorized officers because they are interconnected. But having this opportunity, I just wanted to ask all of the authorized officers to be very active and to actively positioning them not only in their institutions. You have to keep on constantly monitoring the situations that is going on in your institutions. Why the 6 webinars are very important, the 6 webinars that we've had together with the anti-corruption headquarters and together against corruption CSO. So that was a very important moment because our authorized officers were able to hear the experts from the spheres, the land management, municipal utilities properties, the healthcare management. So they have started to understand what are the problems, what are the corruptional schemes possible there. And having these skills, they have started using actively the tools that will prevent the schemes from appearing. We have to keep that in mind that without your active position, there's no way for us to keep on moving forward. Thank you. Thank you, Olga. So, okay, we can see the contacts of the coalitions of the CSOs that has been posted in the chat box. You can find the information on our activities and you can find the contacts that for all of the regions, the Kherson and other regions, the contacts of the coordinators as well, and the organizations, the partnering organizations, and how you can join the work of our coalition if there is the demand and need for that. If we have no questions left, then, and I think, yes, overall, can you please place it on Facebook? Yes, I would like to ask my colleagues if someone is now following us on Facebook, can you please post the contacts on Facebook in the comment section as well? Thank you. So I think that it's high time for us to end. So basically, we are almost in our time frame. Yes, I would just get a couple of words, and the colleagues have said that they would like to have this recording like to have the webinars in the anti-corruption headquarters and together against the corruption. You can see the links for this webinars, and on YouTube you can find us. The video have been posted there. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Olesa, for this clarification. Yes, the webinars are already available. The recordings of that, you can find them on our YouTube's channels, and you can see that on the Facebook pages as well. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you all participants, all moderators. It has been a very interesting discussion, very useful discussion. We have had an opportunity to take a look at it from different points of view, the NICP, the local communities, the civil society, international organizations. Thank you very much. We will keep in touch. We will exchange our experience and achievements, and we will continue this collaboration further on, because we have already seen that this improvement of collaboration, this cooperation between different bodies, between the civil society, is something that is really effective. So we are continuing this collaboration. So join us further on. We'll be really happy to see you soon. Thank you very much and have a nice day.